Welcome to BeFM Drama, where we turn great literature into gripping radio. I'm your host, Joshua Cornwell, and today we're bringing you part 2 in a 5-part adaptation of The Resident Patient, a classic Sherlock Holmes mystery from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson have received a young doctor named Percy Trevelyan at their Baker Street home and office. The young doctor, who had a promising early career but found himself short of the money needed to get himself professionally established in the fashionable Brook St medical district, has come before the Detective Sherlock Holmes to receive his advice on a very odd situation that has developed in his home. As we rejoin the story, Percy Trevelyan prepares to explain both how he began in business and the mysterious events that have led him to seek the advice of the great detective Sherlock Holmes. Trevelyan's strange tale began with the visit of a man named Blessington, a complete stranger who breezed into Trevelyan's tiny office and plunged directly into business without waiting a moment. Their conversation went like this.
Are you Dr. Percy Trevelyan?
I am, yes.
The very same Percy Trevelyan who has so distinguished a career and won great prize lately for his work on nervous lesions?
Trevelyan bowed humbly at this positive mention of his prior achievements.
Answer me frankly, for you will find it in your interest to do so. You have all the cleverness which makes a successful man. Have you the tact?
Trevelyan could not help smiling at the abruptness of the question.
I trust that I have my share.
Any bad habits? Not drawn toward drink, eh?
Really, sir?
Quite right. That's all right, but I was bound to ask. With all these qualities, why are you not in practice?
Trevelyan shrugged his shoulders.
Come, it's the old story. More in your brains than in your pocket, eh? What would you say if I were to get you started in Brook St?
Trevelyan stared at him in astonishment.
Oh, it's for my sake, not for yours. I'll be perfectly frank with you, and if it suits you, it will suit me very well. I have a few thousands to invest, you see, and I think I'll sink them into you.
But why?
Well, it's just like any other speculation, and safer than most.
What am I to do then?
I'll tell you. I'll take the house, furnish it, pay the maids, and run the whole place. All you have to do is wear out your chair in the consulting room. I'll let you have pocket money and everything. Then you hand over to me 3/4 of what you earn, and you keep the other quarter for yourself.
This was a strange proposal with which the man Blessington approached Percy Trevelyan. The young doctor chose not to weary us with an account of how they bargained and negotiated. Suffice to say that it ended with Trevelyan moving into the house the next week and starting his medical practice there on very much the same conditions that Blessington had first suggested. Blessington himself soon came to live there as well, in the role of resident patient. Blessington's heart was weak, it appears, and he needed constant medical supervision. He turned the 2 best rooms on the first floor into a sitting room and bedroom for himself. Blessington was a man of singular habits, shunning company and very seldom going out. His life was irregular, but in one respect, he was regularity itself. Every evening, at the same hour, he walked into the consulting room, examined the books, put down 5 and 3 pence for every guinea that Trevelyan had earned, and carried the rest off to the strong box in his own room. Trevelyan could say with confidence that Blessington never had occasion to regret his initial speculation. From the very first day, his practice was a success. A few good cases and the reputation which he had won in the hospital brought him rapidly to the top tier of his profession. And during the next few years, he made Blessington a very rich man indeed. With this, Trevelyan came at last to the troubling events which had brought him before my friend, the consulting detective Sherlock Holmes. Some weeks before, Mr. Blessington had come down to Trevelyan's office in, as it seemed to him, a state of considerable agitation. He spoke of some burglary, which he said had been committed in the West End, and he appeared to be quite unnecessarily excited about it, declaring that a day should not pass before they added stronger locks to their windows and doors. For a week, he continued to be in a peculiar state of restless anxiety, peering continually out of the windows and ceasing to take the short walk which he usually took before his dinner. From Blessington's manner, it struck Trevelyan that he was in mortal dread of something or somebody. But when he questioned Blessington upon the point, he became so offensive that he was forced to drop the subject. Gradually, as time passed, Blessington's fears appeared to die down, and he had renewed his former habits when a fresh event reduced him to the pitiable state of nervous prostration in which he still remained. What happened was this. 2 days before appearing in Holmes's sitting room, Trevelyan received a letter. Neither address nor date were attached to it. It read, "A Russian nobleman who is now resident in England would be glad to avail himself of the professional assistance of Dr. Percy Trevelyan. He has been for some years a victim of cataleptic attacks, on which, as is well known, Dr. Trevelyan is an expert. He proposes to call at about 6:15 tomorrow evening, if Dr. Trevelyan will make it convenient to be at home." This letter interested Trevelyan deeply, because the chief difficulty in the study of catalepsy is the rareness of the disease. You may believe, then, that he was in his consulting room when, at the appointed hour, his servant showed in the patient. He was an elderly man, thin, demure, and commonplace, by no means the idea one might have of a Russian nobleman. Trevelyan was much more struck by the appearance of the elderly man's companion, a tall young fellow, surprisingly handsome, with a dark, fierce face and the limbs and chest of a Hercules. He had his hand upon the other's arm as they entered, and helped him to a chair with a tenderness which one would hardly have expected from his appearance. As he led in the patient, he spoke to Trevelyan, his English marked by a slight lisp. "You will excuse my coming in, doctor, but this man is my father, and his health is a matter of the most overwhelming importance to me." Trevelyan was touched by this filial anxiety.
You would perhaps prefer to remain here during the consultation?
"Not for the world. It is more painful to me than I can express. If I were to see my father in one of these dreadful seizures, I am convinced that I should never survive it. My own nervous system is an exceptionally sensitive one. With your permission, I will remain in the waiting room while you look into my father's case." To this, of course, Trevelyan assented, and the young man withdrew from the room. He then engaged his patient in a discussion of his case, of which Trevelyan took exhaustive notes. The elderly nobleman was not remarkable for his intelligence, and his answers were frequently obscure, which Trevelyan attributed to his limited familiarity with English. Suddenly, however, as Trevelyan sat writing, the man ceased to give any answer at all, and on turning towards him, the young doctor was shocked to see his patient sitting bolt upright in his chair, staring at him with a perfectly blank and rigid face. It seemed that he was caught in the grip of one of those mysterious cataleptic seizures which tormented him. Trevelyan's first feeling was one of pity and horror. His second, however, was one of professional fascination. He made notes of his patient's pulse and temperature, tested the rigidity of the muscles, and examined his reflexes. There was nothing markedly abnormal in any of these conditions, which harmonized with what the man had said about his earlier experiences with catalepsy. Trevelyan had obtained good results in such cases by administering an inhalation of nitrate of amyl to patients, and the case before him seemed an excellent opportunity to once more test the effectiveness of this treatment. The bottle was downstairs in his laboratory, so, leaving his patient seated in his chair, he ran down to get it. There was a little delay in finding it, 5 minutes perhaps, and then he returned. Imagine, then, Trevelyan's amazement to find the room empty and his patient gone. As we reach the conclusion of part 2 of our program, we begin to see something of why the young Dr. Percy Trevelyan has sought out the assistance of the great detective Sherlock Holmes. Who is Trevelyan's mysterious benefactor, this Mr. Blessington, really? To begin to explore the answers to these questions, you'll need to rejoin us here again tomorrow evening as we bring you part 3 of The Resident Patient here on BeFM Drama. From the studio in Busan, I'm Josh Cornwell, the writer and host of the program. I played the role of the narrator, Dr. Watson, and the young Russian in tonight's episode. Mr. Blessington was played by Ryan Estrada, and Dr. Percy Trevelyan was played by David Kim.